Is that better? Yeah. Are you ready?
Let me double check our needs real quick. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cleveland High School. My name is Eric Girding. I'm a senior project manager with the Office of School Modernization at Portland Public Schools. Really happy to have you all here for our second community design workshop for the modernization of this school. Just want to make a couple announcements before we get started. So this is a public meeting. It is being recorded and live streamed. So just make sure everyone understands that. We did have an official notice out for public comment. We didn't get any comment requests in, but we will have time at the end of our session today for questions, comments, and we'll have that time kind of more informally. So I'll just go ahead and hand it over to Elisa with our architect team to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Are you all able to hear me? Great. So I wanted to start off with a land acknowledgement. This was actually written by the Cleveland High School students. The Portland metro area rests on traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Powlett, Castlemet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. Indigenous people have created communities and summer encampments to harvest and enjoy the plentiful natural resources of the area for the last 11,000 years. We want to recognize that Portland today is a community of many diverse Native people who continue to live and work here. We respectfully acknowledge and honor all Indigenous communities, past, present, and future, and are grateful for their ongoing and vibrant presence. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. As settlers and guests on these lands, we respect the work of Indigenous leaders and families and pledge to make ongoing efforts to recognize their knowledge, creativity, and resilience. Within the Cleveland community, we also acknowledge how we have systemically failed Native students and commit to ensuring a better future for Indigenous and Native students and families who have continued to contribute to bettering our community despite our failings. So again, this is an acknowledgement written by the Cleveland High School students. We are taking it to heart and really grounding our work in this and understanding how we can really respond to this narrative. So with that, again, just to introduce myself, I'm Elisa Laverifon. I'm with Malum Architects. We are the designers partnered with Studio Petretti. There are a number of us here today, and we are also partnered with After Bruce, who is our engagement specialist. So most of the team is over here. If you all maybe just raise your hand so you can see who we are. That's back there as well. So we'll be around to answer any of your questions that you have today. So I'm just curious right now who we have in the room. So I'm just going to ask for a simple raise of hands for who is currently a Cleveland High School student. Awesome. About a future Cleveland High School student. Excellent. Welcome. Parents? Wonderful. Number of parents here. How about neighbors? Great. Community and business partners. Excellent. And just curious who attended actually the first workshop. Okay, so a fair amount of it. Alumni. Oh, yes, of course, alumni. Great. All right, well, with that information, staff, of course. Thank you. So with that, here we were going to have our public comment section. As we mentioned, there was nothing formally that came in, so we will be taking comments at the end of the meeting. As we move forward, just to talk about what our agenda is today. So we've done our introduction. There were no public comments. That 10 minutes will move to the end. We are going to review the comprehensive plan overview just to make sure that everyone knows and remembers what is in a comprehensive plan. Then we'll talk a little bit about the community-based engagement that we've been having and will continue to have throughout this process. We'll talk about the site and existing building context of Cleveland High School. So really what we're focusing on as we move forward. And then some concept approaches. So what we're just starting to look at in terms of what are strategies for the new modernized Cleveland High School. Then we're going to have an activity. There's some boards that are at the back of the room that are turned around right now that will be able to get your input as we move into looking at those concepts and some other things too. Then we'll come back together for that comment section and a close, and then we can go about our day. So just a reminder, in public workshop 1, for those of you who were not here, what we shared was really some information about PPS's comprehensive high school in general. We also took a look at the site program elements for Cleveland High School and the existing building features. And we were looking for feedback. We had just done some high school tours. So anyone who had been at any of the modernized high schools, take a look at that. We talked about some of the historic features. We talked about the auditorium, and then we were really looking for information about balancing site and building program with the existing sites that we have here and thinking about building height and location within those sites. So for today's workshop, what we really hope to do is come away grounded in a shared vision. So we're going to be talking a lot about vision. We also want to make sure that we are understanding the comprehensive plan approaches that we are going to be sharing. There's clarity around what the variables are of those approaches, because there will be trade-offs that we'll be needing to look at. And then an evaluation of those comprehensive plans, which will be when everyone is taking a look at them and giving us some feedback there. For feedback, we will be looking for feedback on the vision and goals and the 4 approaches, the variables. And then really what we're looking for is understanding the desire to keep part of the existing building or to build all new, or to build on one property or on 2 properties. So that will become more apparent as we get through this presentation. So comprehensive plan overview. I just wanted to share that there was a conceptual master plan back in 2019. And we are currently in this phase 1 comprehensive plan, where we are really just looking at what potentially become of the modernized Cleveland High School. And then once we complete this, we will actually move into phase 2, which is the design and the bond and the construction. So just so everyone is familiar with the terms that we're using here, what do we mean when we say modernization? That's probably not a term that everyone uses every day, and we might think of renovation or remodels or all new construction. And really what we want to say is it can be any of those, but really modernization equals transformation. So whether it's an existing structure that remains or it's an all new building, it will be a complete transformation. And it's all built off of the PPS educational specification, which we call an EdSpec. And that really starts to get at the program that identifies the area and the quantity of spaces within the building. And then it also wants to make sure that the same components are at each of the comprehensive sites. Now, what does that actually mean for Cleveland? So we know that Cleveland currently has approximately 254,000 square feet. And based on the ed spec, the school is going to grow. And there are a number of programs that are listed here that Cleveland doesn't currently have, that it will have to bring it up to that parity with the rest of the modernized high school. And some of those are teaching, planning, and collaboration areas, small instruction spaces, flexible learning areas, a larger main gym, an auxiliary gym, clothing, food closet, teen parent services, makerspace, special education suite, and a black box theater. And there might be more. So when we're done with this plan, what we're really hoping to make sure that we cover is sites. So really understanding the best and highest use of each of the 3 sites for Cleveland High School. Improving student safety in and around the campus. So also thinking about the transitions between those sites. And then site program elements. So making sure that we have a good understanding of the need there. For the building, we really need to understand whether we will be retaining any of the existing building or not. So a discussion point for sure. And then the location of where that main building is and the height of that building, considering that we have such a constrained site here. And then our priorities. So as we make these decisions, we really want to be grounded in those vision and goals that we've established, as well as understanding Cleveland's specific program needs. So making sure that we are understanding what is special and specific about Cleveland. And then always in support of marginalized groups. So wanting to make sure that we are really reaching out and getting perspectives from everyone. So with that, right, I'm going to turn it over to Alfred Bruce.
If you can click, that would be great, because I'm going to have to use my notes a little bit. Hello, everyone. I am Maria Medina. I have met some of you throughout this process so far. I am a member of the After Bruce community engagement team, the folks who are partnering with this project to do community engagement. So this diagram, we've used this at every meeting, but I just want to ensure everyone that we are collecting information and working with all of these folks to be part of a reciprocal and integrated feedback loop. So collecting things from many different communities to make sure that we are reporting back everything that we learned from folks back to the design team and to PPN. Back up. So, we started listening sessions just this past week. We've had one with folks from this high school who are working in special education and with parents and students of the program that you all have here. And where we are with the listening sessions, I'll go into a little bit later. But we're also working on developing our DIY facilitators guide. And that's going to be created, co-created with students from the school for students to use. And then we have a survey that's coming through our feedback loop. How much time do I have? Okay, awesome. I just want to know how much I should be talking. Oh, great. So on our next slide here, just to talk a little bit about like what we're doing and the types of community engagement we've been doing, because I don't want to assume that everyone has been to every meeting or knows what strategies we use. So we use community listening sessions, we use stakeholder interviews, we use office hours, which are open houses, surveys, and things like that. And so here we've already done stakeholder interviews. Stakeholder interviews are interviews that we created a list of folks that have a vested interest or that are part of the school community, and we had them help us decide what kinds of questions and what information should be collected at listening sessions. Let's see here. You can see here on the left that we have folks that we are looking to do more listening sessions with. These are the folks from underserved communities that we feel like would be the best folks to do community listening sessions with. And we're hoping to continue through the rest of this month and through March. I have a QR code, and we'll also leave some of these flyers that have a list of the community listening sessions that will be coming up over the next 2 months. If anyone knows anyone who fits into any of these groups, or anyone has any questions about listening sessions, that you can go ahead and just check in with me, or just use the QR code and check into our listening session schedule. Right, and through the community feedback, there's a couple of things that we have learned. I'm pulling up my notes. Like here, one thing that we learned is, oh, this is not the same slides I had, but these, it's okay. Because the way that we collect things from communities is that while we're hosting listening sessions, we are able to retrieve all of the data that people are giving us, and then we synthesize it into a document that we send over to our community partners over at Malum and Petretti. And so you can see here that there's like some statements that people made through the listening sessions, like the importance of engaging the special education and disability community. We found that folks actually need a little bit more extra time, and there needs to be a little bit more vested interest in that community's feedback. People need to find daycare. People can't just get up and leave. People might need like extra time to respond to different things that are happening. So just knowing that we need more time for folks. Also, it let us know that we need to like rethink the communities that we are engaging with. Right. So am I going to pass this over to Hannah?
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Hannah. So alongside the community engagement process that after Bruce's led, we've asked for a lot of feedback from all of you. And we've done that through voting, through post-it notes, through open forums. I'll share a little bit about what we've heard to date. This is just one high-level excerpt of a lot of comments that we've heard, but we've heard a lot of themes around, I'll just read a few of these, but around finding opportunities for intensive skills classrooms to learn and practice life skills. We've heard themes around the need for multidisciplinary and flexible performance space, and this idea that we shouldn't keep the theater stuck in the 20th century. We've heard a lot of themes around the idea that when kids leave campus, there's no space outside that feels safe, and that interior outside space is key. So we've taken this feedback and used this along the way to shape. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but we've used this to shape our vision and our goals for the project. So that's another item that we've asked you for feedback on, and we'll continue to do that. You might remember that last time we handed out sticky dots and asked you to vote along spectrums, and that was really to be able to gauge where people felt there was importance around the historic building, around the massing, outdoor space. So I'll read through this because we, again, got a lot of feedback. We found there was general consensus around support for a tall building that maximized outdoor space. We heard a lot of consensus around trying to co-locate particular programs together. Where we had a little bit more discrepancy are the spectrum dots that you see here. So the blue are what we heard from our comprehensive planning committee. The red are what we heard from the public at this meeting last time. And then the purple is what we heard from the staff. So the first three spectrums here are where we were looking for feedback around how we balance the needs across 1 or 2 sites. And you can see that there's a little bit more kind of disbursement between the dots. The bottom is whether or not to keep the 1929 building. And again, that's where we saw a little bit more disbursement between the dots. So really what all of this told us is that we just need to do more discovery. So we'll come to you again today asking for feedback around those themes. You'll see when we get to the activity that we'll turn these boards around at the back of the room and ask you to vote again and comment again. Use the feedback to shape the vision statement here, and I'll read this. And it's that the modernized Cleveland High School will draw inspiration from its context to create a vibrant campus that centers students and staff. Design will celebrate the school's role as the heart of the Cleveland High School community, a vital part of the neighborhood, and an enduring presence in Southeast Portland. We'll hand out some worksheets that ask you again for feedback on this, but our goal is to finalize this vision statement and use this as we move forward into design. That vision statement is shaped by goals that again we've heard from all of you. And these are that we develop academic and extracurricular excellence with intercultural understanding, that we promote health, wellness, and climate resiliency, that we improve student safety in and around the site, that we create a welcoming, inclusive environment that supports students and staff, that we acknowledge the Indigenous legacy of the site, and the bottom one here, which might be hard to read, that we enhance Cleveland High School's role as a civic presence and community resource. So when we get the boards, you'll see that we've repeated all of these goals next to each planning scheme, and we're asking you to evaluate those schemes relative to the goals. And we'll be at each of those to kind of help guide what that feedback looks like. And with that, I'll hand it to
My name's Chris. I'm with the Malin Studio Fraternity Architect team, and we have continued to study the existing building and to sort of see how it can fit with the program, the EdSpec program that we need to fit onto the site. Looking at this slide, the typical classroom at Cleveland High School is only 580 square feet, which is quite small, as many of you probably know. The current EdSpec target size is 980 square feet. Typical classroom at Grant was 790, and at Lincoln was 890. So the EdSpec target that we're shooting for now is even larger than those classrooms. And then another thing to note while we have these photos up, you can see the windows in the Cleveland classroom. They're tall and evenly spaced to bring daylight deep into the space, similar to the ones at Grant back in the 20s when those buildings were built. Electric light wasn't quite as good as it is now, so it was much more important to bring daylight deep into the classroom spaces. And the windows at Grant had been the same style as what is, from the 80s, what was put in at Cleveland and what's here now. So we should be able to replace those windows. So looking at layouts of existing classrooms on the bottom, we did a test fit to see how a new layout of classrooms, and I think we're pretty close to the education specification targets, square foot size, and if we can fudge those a little bit to get pretty much right on target. I think the most appropriate types of spaces to go into the existing building would have to be classrooms, possibly science labs, administrative spaces. It's not really as well suited to some of the larger CTE training type of spaces. One thing to point out is that the classrooms in the existing building are more of a rectangular shape. That's an advantage when it comes to providing daylight because they're not as deep away from the windows, but it does put some students farther away than it would in a square classroom. So shifting a little bit to talk about sustainability. You may recall that PPS passed a district policy a called the Climate Crisis Response, Climate Justice and Sustainability Practices Policy. So that's a district-wide thing that affects education as well as the built environment. And we're focused on what came out of that, which was the PPS energy and sustainability standards, set very high targets for energy efficiency within buildings. So rather than what could be a code minimum high school, which would have 40 EUI, we're looking to reduce the amount of energy by a quarter to hit our targets. And we would do that through looking at HVAC systems, all of the systems, trying to get everything integrated to make sure it's energy efficient. In terms of the carbon of the operation of the building, the graph on the right there shows, we'll say, 150 units of carbon would be what a building built to the PPS standards would use. So that's about 50 units of carbon saved from a typical code minimum building to operate the building. But we also want to look at embodied carbon. What embodied carbon is, it's the material, the carbon and energy that goes into making the materials, manufacturing, transportation, installing, maintenance of all of the materials. And so if we look at that as the existing building, many of the materials in the existing building would be demolished. However, structure could potentially remain and the bricks on the outside of the building. So if we look at the embodied carbon in that material, we see we can get, just by saving the structure of a portion of the existing building, about 11.5 units of carbon. So that's a significant amount relative to what it takes to operate the building. So in addition to the sort of quantitative measurements of the embodied carbon, there are also sort of more qualitative factors to consider regarding the existing building. The 1929 portion of the existing building it has sufficient historic character that it has been found to be eligible for the National Historic Register. And I think that this sort of historic significance is easier to recognize visually, but we also need to consider the meaning and associations that the place takes on for people as it conjures memories and nostalgia, sometimes over generations. And then another thing to consider is that the use of the old building, not necessarily all or nothing competition, say some parts not. I think a lot of the schemes you see say yes or no, but we can also look for sort of in-between solutions as well. So as I was talking about, the existing buildings can take on meaning, and I think it's also important to note that the existing building is built in a classical revival style, represents European notions of civic architecture. I think it is a design that can represent systemic and social injustice as well. For example, to enter the building, you have to go up a grand stair and get to a space that's meant to feel important, and I think to some it may feel exclusive. So if we modernize the building, we'll need to create an entry that is both meets code for accessibility, so people with wheelchair can access it, but also one that is sort of engenders a more inclusive expression for all students. So our challenge as architects, see how we can use modernization as an opportunity to change the narrative to help achieve the goals of the PPS vision, which this is a diagram of the vision that was developed by PPS that you see on the right-hand side. So creating conversation between the old structure and the new, I think, is an opportunity to address this. paraphrase the famous quote, those who tear down their history are more likely to repeat it. And with that, I'll hand it over for the second.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Petretti. Can you hear me? Does the sound okay? So this is gonna be the last major portion of the presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity for everyone to provide their input. So please do. Yeah, it's on the list. Well, everyone will have an opportunity to provide input, so please stick around. And we're getting to the end of the talking part. So I'm going to be talking about site studies. So what we have actually done to date to look at specific potential solutions for the Cleveland High School campus. So last time, if you were here at the last workshop, what you saw was 3 major site approaches, which you see on the slide here. So on the left is what we're referring to as site study 1, which locates Cleveland High School, all the major program elements on this block that we're on right now. Not dissimilar to what you have right now in the sense of a cohesive campus on a single city block. And the second site study in the center is looking at using the current parking lot for a more major program and building area. So going over 26 and using both of the located properties for major school elements. The third option that we looked at last time was looking at the athletic site, which is down Powell and Waverly. And Franklin sort of connects to as well, that currently has a track and field on it. We looked at, could that be used for the major school? So it would be built new construction there. We have decided to move past that option primarily because the current track and field does not have another TPS currently owned property that it can move to. And a track and field is required as part of modernized public school, high school campuses. So I want to let everyone know that that one has fallen out of favor, and we are focusing on those first 2 options. And everything you'll see for the rest of this presentation is based on that dynamic of either a consolidated Cleveland High School on one property or spanning 26 to 100. So we have been making some decisions as we've been moving along. We're still at a pretty high level in this phase of the project, but decisions that have been made are that we are only going to use PPS owned sites. That is all what we're looking at. So if you came here today wondering about the Frank Meyer site or any other site, we're not currently looking at those as viable design options because they're not presently on the market and not presently part of PPS owned properties. The all versions of this project will meet the ed spec that Elisa was referring to earlier. So Cleveland High School, no matter what kind of approach we take, will be a modernized high school, larger than the current one, and fit to the future of high school education for public schools. And you will get many more features than you have currently. The project, the building in the future will cover approximately 60 to 70% of the site area. That we've landed on that as an element of working within current zoning codes, but also with what we've test fit on properties to get a good balance of open space and building area. The building will be 4 to 5 stories tall in order to fit that full ed spec modernized high school on any of the properties. And we will have decided not to reuse the existing theater. That was a big topic of discussion at the last public meeting and other related meetings. And we have not heard a ton of love for keeping the existing theater, even though there are a range of voices on that. So we will not be reusing the existing theater. Now, many of you may have come today wanting to talk about the look and feel of the design, get into specifics and where's the front door and what is the exact number of parking spaces, or how are we going to improve the sidewalks. Those are really, really important things. They're more detailed than we'll be getting into today. At this point in the process, we're still pretty high level about deciding where a program will be on the sites and their major relationships. We will absolutely be getting to that further detail. It will just be in the video. So now we'll talk about some of these specific options. We have 4 of them to be looking at today. Now, we have many decisions to make together. And PPS will be moving forward, being very diligent on all of them. Right now in the process, what we would love to have everyone help us focus on is getting input on whether we should retain the 1929 buildings. That is the most historic part of Cleveland High School building, or not. So basically, should the project be some renovation of existing historic building plus new construction, or just all new construction? And then the second major question is, should we build on one property or two properties? There's two different site approaches. Should we go over 26? That's where we'd love to focus today. So no matter what of the four options that you prefer, they will all be experientially rich. We feel really good that we're only showing you options that can result in a wonderful experience of high school for students, staff, and community. They will all represent improved safety around sites. So that's top of mind. But the choices we make will impact the trade-off between open space and parking. They'll also impact the trade-off between the fit, function, and scale. So what Chris was talking about with the existing building and how we fit classrooms into them. If we reuse existing space, there is an impact on the scale and proportion of some of the spaces that will result compared to new construction. And then the decision about keeping the existing building or not will impact the sort of social narrative that different people will have different lenses on. Whether that means an alumni that was really excited about keeping the existing building because it's important in their personal history, or whether it's someone from the Indigenous community who recognizes the complexity around land ownership and how this current school came about. Those are different approaches. And of course, decisions about new construction or existing will impact your first decisions about embodied carbon or starting with from a sustainability perspective. While embodied carbon isn't the be-all and end-all of sustainability for this project, it is a good thing that we have to be aware of really early on our early decisions. So we're going to dive into the actual options now. Okay, so these are four options that I'm going to give you just a real simple breakdown on, and then we're going to go into each individual one. Okay. And there will be more information about these same options on the boards behind us later on in this presentation, so you'll be able to get up and close to them. But I'd like to give everyone the same information to work. If it's okay, I'm going to hold questions. I know I saw a hand before, but I'm going to hold them until the end if that's okay. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so the top two options here, labeled 1 and 2, are the consolidated options. So what that means is that they consolidate all the program on one property. So that's this block that we're on right now. The lower two options, 3 and 4, we're referring to as distributed. So they work with two properties. They go across 26 right here and utilize the parking lot for major program. If we look at these options from a different lens of existing building or new construction, the two left options reuse the existing 1929 building. And you can see that rendered in the sort of white here with new construction around it. Whereas the option 4 is all new construction. So we have these two major topics: new construction or renovate, and consolidate it on one property or go across 26. These are really big decisions, and we need your input to understand how you see them and how you see the impact for Cleveland High School. So to the still kind of big picture level, comparing these four options, you can see that option 1 has sort of the smallest open space on the site with more on-site parking available because it leaves the parking lot improved, but effectively the same use that it is. Option 2, where we're looking at new construction all in one site, has a medium-sized open space on the site with more on-site parking available as well, because we leave the parking lot essentially as is. Whereas the lower options, where we go across 26, when we retain the existing building, because we're sort of decanting part of the program to the property across the street, it really is an improvement on everything being on one site with the existing building, you get a medium-sized open space. And on the fourth option, with is sort of the largest open space possible, and we heard that as a really important goal in all the input that we've heard so far, where we have new construction, which allows us to have a lot of flexibility with the shape and position of the high school building. And then we also are able to take some of the program across 26. So that's open space and how they compare. When we look at cost, because we know that that's something that people are really interested in, I'll say that we are at a very high level, right? So we are not at the very detailed level of cost, but we are looking at costs very carefully from the very beginning to understand value, both from a financial perspective, but also from a vision and other aspects of value. So what we know so far is that the second approach here, where we have new construction consolidated on one property with the parking lot getting basic updates, is our baseline cost approach, meaning that it is our most effective approach to building a modernized Cleveland high school. Most effective. That is roughly around $400 million. That is all in, and it's a very round number. The other options are not huge differences from that, but there is a difference in even these really, really early moves, what we're sort of baking in cost-wise to the project. And we need to be really careful about those early decisions, because once made, we can't go back, right? So we're trying to be really good stewards of public dollars and make sure that we're cost aware. So up from the baseline cost of new construction consolidated to one primary property, this option here, consolidated with partial existing renovation, is about $10 million in round terms over this baseline. And what that is caused by is a number of issues, but primarily is the spatial inefficiencies of the existing building. So when we have to kind of do jigs and jogs within the existing building in order to fit the proper size classroom or other specialized spaces, they may be larger or differently shaped than they would be in new construction, which means the overall sort of built area is a little bit more than it would be in a new construction in order to fit the same uses. So that's part of it. The other part of it is that a 1929 building requires really careful construction and really thoughtful process, which means we will wind up shoring up part of the existing building and really needing to have a certain level of complexity to the construction process that just isn't present in new construction. When we go to the lower left option 3, where we have distributed across 26 and retaining the existing building, that's sort of our most cost option. That's about a $35 million add over the baseline approach. The reason that happens is multifold. One is that we've just decided as a design team and with PPS that once we go across 26th Avenue to the parking lot site, start building there, we need to provide a skybridge for students and staff to be able to access that program across the street during the school day. We've heard really loud and clear that 26th Avenue is a risk from a safety perspective. And while we will continue to try to mitigate that risk on the street level with improvements in crossings, we don't think that's enough. We think that if we're going across 26, we have to have a skybridge. Now, that skybridge would happen at the 3rd floor level in order to get the clearance under it for, say, emergency vehicles and trucks and such. So that is sort of baked into those bottom 2 options there. There is a cost to them, right? It's not insignificant. And the costs that will be allocated or budget by the voters won't necessarily be more because we desire a skybridge at Cleveland High School. So it may have to come from other places in the project. So when we're looking at pure costs, that the skybridge, spatial inefficiencies I referred to earlier with existing buildings and construction complexity, as well as just building on 2 sites. When we build on 2 sites, we have 2 sets of foundations, we have just 2 sets of a lot of things, and we may have schedule impacts. So that's our most expensive option. In the lower right, option 4, where the program is distributed across 2 properties across 26, but we have all new construction. We still have some of those cost complexities like a sky bridge and building on 2 sites. But with new construction, we think that there's more efficiency compared to reusing the existing building. And so it represents round numbers around $25 million more over the baseline approach, staying on 1 site. So these aren't finely tuned numbers, but they're round numbers to give you a rough order of magnitude of the impact of early decisions on eventual costs. Okay, so I'm going to go through these fairly quickly so we can make sure we have enough time for the activity. But this is that first option, again, consolidated onto 1 property while reusing the 1929 historic part of the building, which wraps 26th Avenue and the part of Powell Boulevard and part of Brooklyn. So we're calling out here some specific major program items so that you can understand and orient yourself. The gymnasiums and so primary interior athletics program we see is likely located in the southeast corner of the property for good access to Waverly Boulevard, which connects to the field site. And then the theater, and that's in orange. And then the purple is the theater and performing arts. So that is the not only just like the theater where you go to see a performance, but the spaces that support that, like band and other set design programs. So even in the options where we reuse the 1929 part of the building, in order to get to the area required for a modernized high school, 2/3 of the overall final building will still be new construction. Because for one, a lot of the existing building on the site right now on Cleveland isn't preferred to be reused. Will be taken down and not reused. So we only have the 1929 portion that really has enough value to consider reusing. And the second reason is that Cleveland High School will be much larger in the future than it currently is in order to provide the future robust programming. The second option, which is consolidated but all new construction, again, we're placing likely the theater and performing arts on the east portion of the site, as well as the gymnasium, athletics areas, with new construction for classrooms and other major program spaces. For the distributed and partial existing scheme, this is where the sky bridge starts coming in and we go across 26. One of the big questions that we've had, and we'll love to hear feedback on as we get into the activity, is what's appropriate to go across Southeast 26th Avenue if we decamp and pull out some of the programs that are being blocked. There's a lot of different thoughts about this. So what we're showing here is that the performing arts would be what is located across 26th Avenue. That is primarily because it has enough area that taking it out of the main building actually loosens up what you have to put on the main site. So it's sort of worth it to pull off. And the thought is that it can have a nice presence as a performing arts center, sort of across 26th Avenue. Again, you see the sky bridge there that allows staff and students to cross during the day. We acknowledge that even if we provide the sky bridge, it will be probably difficult to be faster than the cleverness of a high school student in terms of getting across 26 during the day on the street level. That's an operational question about how we, really drive students to the sky bridge. And we feel good about our ability to improve the likelihood of that with design. But we're also acknowledge that it's probably unlikely that students will only use the sky bridge. So that's something that we're sort of thinking about as we're designing. There are requirements around the sky bridge that will require approvals from the city. And we are going down that route of trying to have that conversation with the city, but we don't have a decision yet about whether we're allowed to do it. It is not something we automatically get to do because we want to. We have to ask for approval from city council. So that is an outstanding question, but it's one that we think we have a good rationale to pitch. For the fourth option, again, this is sort of the largest open space, the most flexibility. This again does require going off across 26 and has a lot of potential for how we use the site and really maximize that open space. Okay, so again, this is all for options, and we will have boards for each. And they're going to start to be turned around here in a moment. Thank you, Hannah. What you'll see is perspectives or views of each option, and then a board where we have each of the values and goals from the vision statement that Hannah talked about earlier. And we'd love to hear from you, really whatever you have to say about these options, but in particular, how you think that they meet the vision or goals, or what your concerns or questions are. And there'll be design team members located at each board to make sure we can answer questions, hear your feedback. But please do make sure that you do some writing if possible, or ask one of the design team members to do it for you, because we take really, really seriously the input that we get, and like what we hear, we record, but it's really, really important that it gets written down so that we can all see it and really quantify it. Yes.
There's a commons in 1 and 3 and not in 2 and 4.
Okay.
And then there's also a white building in the parking lot in all of them, and
Okay, thank you. I will orient you for sure. So there's a commons in all of them. It may be that the particular view that we're looking at doesn't show it because it's, physically small lower down. So in all 4 options, the same program will be represented. The building will be roughly the same size, with the exception of the existing building will probably reuse scenarios will be a little bit larger, but the same program uses, just slightly less efficiently. The white building right here is the Burgerville. That's the Burgerville property, which is now
Okay.
its property. Thank you, because
Okay.
not everyone has been here for those conversations. Thank you. Did I answer all your questions?
How was the decision made already to get rid of the theater?
Good question. It might be a sidebar to give you a full answer, but we have had 2, 3.
State the question.
Oh, sorry, yes. So the question was, how was this decision made already to get rid of, to not reuse the existing theater? I'd say that we've heard a variety of opinions, certainly, on that. What it's come down to is that we heard in multiple public meetings, a lot of the CBC meetings that are happening, more focus groups, is that the existing theater doesn't meet future needs for how to teach theater and performance. And that a new theater would better serve the needs of staff and students in the building. We've also heard that there is some ambivalence about the existing theater, and that there's, if all things were equal and we could reuse it and get the best space, we would consider that. But right now, what we've heard pretty clearly from a variety of sources is that a new theater would serve students and staff and community at a higher level than the existing theater.
You mentioned some cost differences between the options laid out. Is there post timeline differences in the different options we have?
Great question. We are starting to look at that. And we're not quite at a point where we can say, this one's 20 months and this one's 19 months. But generally, I think when we go across 26th Avenue, there's a higher likelihood of schedule extension for the construction process, because that parking lot is a great staging area for construction that one might want to utilize for as long as possible and build that performing arts center later in the process, which may extend the overall schedule. But we do not yet have a general contractor selected for the project. And so those are questions that would be dug into more deeply as we move forward in the process. We do have constructability consultants that are working with us on that, and we're looking at those issues. Right now, it's not a huge difference between the options, but a little bit of the cost impact that you're seeing is a potential need to rent space nearby for construction laydown area and staging. That if we go to the 2 sites.
Hi, I'm a disability rights advocate, and it seemed like you didn't do any community facing disability advocacy. inquiry, and I'm wondering if that's true. That's one question. The second question is, how can the disability rights community be part of the discussion?
Great, I'm gonna repeat that. So the question was about disability rights advocacy and making sure that we don't lose that in the process and wondering what we've done so far. So I might phone a friend here for others on the team that have been leading that part of the process. But right now, frankly, because of the strike and the ice storm, we're a little bit behind on some of our affinity group and specialized group outreach, but that is all started.
Say really quickly, like we are currently right now, working with folks from that particular community that you work in. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give you one of these, just so that you can contact us separately, but, we would love to have feedback. So we are just collecting all community feedback and synthesizing it, which means just putting it into a package and sending it over to the design team. So we are definitely, in the process of doing that right now. And so what I was saying a little bit earlier, and I left this back of them about the table over here, but what I was saying earlier too is that we are working with these communities right now. So if like any work that you do, or if you are part of any of these communities, or if you have an ally, someone that can take information that maybe, let's just say it's a student group, and maybe you're not a student, but you have a child who is, then maybe you can talk to your student and like have them bring information to us as well. And so we are in the process of collecting data right now and would love to have feedback. We also understand that there's a variety of different methods that things need to be collected specifically for communities that serve and have disabled folks in their families. So we understand that it might take surveys, it might take different types of strategies. So please just reach out to us if you have any feedback. And we are always available for like everyone at After Bruce. So whether you contact us directly or through Petretti or Malum or PPS. So if folks have feedback, send it. Okay, that's
Perfect. So I'll also add to that this we're at the very early stages of this project. And so it's awesome that After Bruce has been able to do this extent of outreach already, and we'll continue to do it throughout the process. Okay, I'm gonna have like two more questions, one and one. And then we're gonna go to the activity. But
I'm just not sure I remember this correctly, but the last few days we thought that the existing building was one thing discussed. Facade, some of the historical features was another thing discussed. How does that fit into these four options? Is that one of these four options or totally?
great questions. The question was that last time we talked at the last public meeting, there was a discussion of existing building or not, but a little more specifics in terms of the historic sort of resources or specific details about it. I would say that's all still a part of the process. In either of the options where we retain the historic building, I think there will be a second, third, and fourth level retail decisions about how much to retain in reality, whether it is the full physical frame or whether it's just the component parts. I think that what we heard really clearly from the input was that there were specific features that are like have more love than others, like for what people are that are more part of people's memory of existing Cleveland High School. And so we have a historic resources consultant that is a part of our project, and we'll continue to try to catalog and retain elements, if that makes sense, on if an existing reuse option is selected. And or even if a new construction option is selected, we're still going to keep our eye open for those opportunities for either reuse or inspiration from. For instance, the phrases above some of the main entries that are around the historic 1929 buildings. We've heard a lot of people be interested in those from a variety of different lenses. And, you know, even if in a new construction scenario, we may look at either retaining portions of those and reinstalling them somewhere, or saying, you know, these particular speakers in history may have had one lens on education in our community, and there are many others that we'd like to consider, and perhaps the new high school in any form could include, inspirational messages from a wide inclusive range of community members and leaders in our country.
Okay, so budget wise.
Yes.
And not holding you to the numbers, but using them as the examples. So 400 million for baseline cost. In your experience with the other schools, that we look at these different choices, they have different costs. If people are drawn to one over another, and that one is $25 million more, does that generally mean the total cost of the project still needs to stay around that 400 million? And the 25 for the additional, sky bridge and building will take from other finishes and pictures? Or will you try to go out with a bond that's 425? Or is it a both? Is it a kind of all in discussion?
Thank you. So,
Sorry. The reason I'm asking the question is that as people stand up and start to kind of give their opinions and decide, if you are relatively neutral between two choices, and then you find out the more expensive one would take from, I don't know, additional equipment in the science labs and, maybe the finishes on the walls would be very plain instead of maybe, something else. You might choose the less expensive one to go with the so.
But so I think you spoke loudly. Most people heard you, but just for the sake of the recording, I repeat. The question is essentially, if there is a differential cost between options, where does that increase in cost come from? Does it come from a baseline number that is what Cleveland High School is going to get? And by making early decisions that bake in complex or costly moves, you don't get as much to spend on other things? Or do we just ask the public for money?
Right.
Would you like me to take this or would you like?
So I think one thing just to be clear is that we do not have funding for construction. So right now, the funding that we have is just for the planning and design of the project. So funding for construction has to come from a future bond. And Cleveland High School is not the only project that the district is developing for potential bond funds. So when we're talking about budget and costs and decisions, say on this project, and the differences between the options, that also has an impact on other projects that the district is looking at, because again, there's kind of a multitude of work that we're doing. There's work that we'd like to improve our some of our athletic fields. There's Ida B. Wells High School, which is also the same process we're doing right now. And all of these sort of different needs, as well as a lot of deferred maintenance that the district still has to conduct, that kind of goes into an overall discussion of what would be on a future bond. So there may be options that say we really like, that create a lot of open space, that are more expensive, but that may impact the ability for either other work that's important to get on a future bond, or even this project to get on a future bond. So we're really wanting to make sure that we keep our costs sort of to a minimum, so that we can provide a modernized high school for Cleveland, recognizing it's part of an overall program. At the same time, as we're looking at these different options, there are certain trade-offs that occur. And so if we really want more open site, but it costs more, then we need to weigh that with our overall budget. It could be, a sky bridge. Paying for a sky bridge is not building classrooms or program space. So if we do have a sky bridge, then yes, we would have to at least look at more efficient design. It's not going to reduce the amount of equipment or sort of program facilities. I mean, that's a basic requirement that we'll provide in all the projects. But it just makes it a little bit more complicated as our costs go up and how we balance the needs of the overall district.
When this question was asked at another point, recently, I also wanted to just add that we are at really high level right now. We need to make big decisions, right? And we're asking for your input to make those big decisions. And where our value is to try to make a modernized Cleveland High School that is the best possible Cleveland it can be for this community as soon as possible. And by being conscious of costs and being really careful about the overall Portland Public School needs in the district, we are trying to do that, right? That is why we are talking about cost right now, so we can have a really palatable project for everyone to vote on and approve so that you get your Cleveland High School as soon as possible. Okay, I think we're gonna launch into the activity now. And so you'll see behind you, option state layout 1 on the far left, which is the existing building renovation plus some new construction all on one property. Site layout 2, which is consolidated and new. So all on one property, all new construction. And that's our baseline cost. And I'll add that we feel really good about all of the options that we have in front of you right now. We feel really, really good about the ability to provide a modernized, exceptional Cleveland High School on the site layout 3, which is distributed across 26 while reusing the existing 1929 building. And then site option 4, all new construction distributed across 26. You'll also see that on the right, you have some colored dots variables in the corner, and those are asking really specific questions about basically where you land preference wise. Besides the details of each option, do you think new construction, all new construction, is the way to go? Or do you think reusing the existing building is the way to go? And then another spectrum that's about the one property or two properties. So those are really, really important. Please make sure you grab a dot and weigh in so we can see where the range of voices are in the room. And then all the way on the right, we didn't present about it because it's a bit detailed and we've been speaking at length already. But there is additional information there about the site crossings in terms of improvements to circulation between the track and field site, around the edges of the campus, as well as some sort of design thoughts about entry and how we make a wonderful experience on the modernized campus. So please look at those if you're interested in some of those details, and we'll have design team members spread throughout. Thank you so much for everyone's patience and focus today. And we want to come back at the end in about maybe 20 minutes. We will, is that right? 20 minutes? We will come back together to talk about the next steps, which is a CPC meeting on February 15th and a final meeting.
Yeah. On the committee there.
Yeah. If anyone else has any additional Q&A, we'll do more on that as well.
Where you
Hi, glad to see you. Did you hear my ET question? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody, if I can get your attention, please. We've got about 10 minutes before we're supposed to wrap up today. So if anyone would like to come back to the tables here, we could do some general questions and answers if you'd like. Or you can continue discussing at the board, but just want to provide that opportunity for any questions or comments before we finish. Thank you. Yes, it did get quiet. Question.
So I'm still wondering what the difference is between the design advisory group and this group. And does the design advisory group get into issues like whether there's a health center at the school?
Okay, the question was, what's the difference between the design advisory group, this group and our comprehensive planning committee, perhaps you're referring to? The design advisory group is a group that we will convene when the building design process starts. So right now, our planning committee is part of the comprehensive planning effort. Our comprehensive plan will be developed and submitted to the board this spring for approval. Once that happens, we move into the design phase with the architects and engineers. And at that point, the comprehensive planning committee will be disbanded. Then we will have a new committee come together, which is called the Design Advisory Group. So we would also have a similar application process. A notice would go out to the community to invite people to apply for the Design Advisory Group. Now that group will be meeting with on a regular basis through the design process to give us input on the actual design of the building and program and so forth. Question.
You say, notice will go out to the community, where should we monitor for that notice? I think it's telling them there was no public comment.
Yeah, so the notice for the design advisory group, we'll be putting that sort of notice out in various forms. They'll be posted on the project website. That's a PPS website. We'll be sending out email notices through our email system. We'll be asking the school here and also the feeder schools within the Cleveland catchment area to also send out notices to their communities. I mean, we have our own email distribution, which is about 5,000 email addresses with, just within the Cleveland catchment area. So we'll be doing our best to get the word out to everybody to apply. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I know it's very early, but is there a rough schedule as to when construction might?
Good question. No. Is there a schedule? When will construction start, perhaps? As we mentioned, we don't have funding for the construction yet, so that is contingent on a future bond, which we are hoping would be this fall, this November, for the general election. But that decision making is kind of beyond the project team, at the school board level. But once we know kind of if we're on the bond, then we can start looking at potential schedule. We do know that the design and permitting process takes about 18 to 24 months. The construction process takes between maybe 24 to 30 months. It really kind of depends on the overall plan and the scheme and when we can get started. The assumption is here that during construction, the Cleveland program would go to the Marshall campus during the construction duration, so that then they can move back into the new building when it's completed. Any other questions? Yes.
So the school board is starting to discuss how many big issues from the entire bond program. So the school board meeting this last Tuesday, Tuesday before, was really the first presentation that was made to the school board about
potential plans, they're looking at different options, with funding options, where they reach out, so we can go discussion. But if you go back, to that meeting, this last Tuesday, Tuesday before, and it's really kind of over at the end of the meetings. So you can look and there's like a little bit of discussion around that. So. Yeah, it'll be on, you go to the PDF website, and live stream section. There was really just the very first public discussion around that. And if we do the process that we've done before with these, there will be some public meetings out there to discuss what's going on. It's not all done. But it is the school board that ultimately decides how much a bond is going to be, when you're going to put it out, and what things are on that. Every other bond will have 3 high schools the first bond, 3 high schools the second. Last one, the 2020 only Jefferson was on it, so it needs to. There has been a overall idea that we try to school first, but it's really up to this.
Thanks, David. Any other questions before we wrap up? Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate you coming and spending your Saturday morning with us, giving us some really valuable input. We look forward to collecting that and seeing where people are thinking about things, and be on the lookout for further notices about other opportunities to provide input on the project. And thank you very much, and have a great rest of your Saturday.
It's not.